My name is Vivian Cross. I'm 31 years old. And 3 weeks ago, I learned that sometimes the moment your life falls apart does not look dramatic at all. Sometimes it looks like a text message arriving in the middle of a work call. Something casual. Something almost insulting in how casual it is. A message so absurd your brain refuses to process it the first time you read it. Mine said, "Don't freak out. Claire borrowed your PC and she can't bring it back yet." That was it. No apology. No warning. No asking. Just a cheerful little grenade dropped into my afternoon by the man I was supposed to marry. And the worst part? By the time I read it, my fiancé had already known for nearly a week. At the time, I was sitting in my home office in our townhouse in Austin, halfway through a Zoom call with a client, listening to a conversation about penetration testing timelines and endpoint vulnerabilities. My camera was on, my notes were open, my tone was calm, measured, professional. Outwardly, I looked like a woman who had her life under control. Internally, my entire nervous system had just frozen solid. I read the text once, then again, then a third time, because surely I had misunderstood it. Claire borrowed your PC. Borrowed. As if he were talking about a sweater. As if he were talking about a charger. As if the machine he was referring to was not a custom-built setup I had spent over a year and a half putting together piece by piece, tuning like it was some mechanical extension of my own brain. That PC was worth around $4,000 all in. High-end GPU. Top-tier Ryzen processor. Custom water loop. 3 monitors. Mechanical keyboard. Premium storage. Everything optimized exactly the way I wanted it. I used it for gaming, side projects, malware sandboxes, and backup work simulations when I needed a more flexible environment than my lockdown work laptop allowed. But even that wasn't the real reason the message hit me like a slap. The real reason was what was on it. Client-related reference materials protected under NDAs, encrypted keys, archived photos and videos, and one backup drive that held the last recordings I had of my mother before she died. Video clips from the final family gathering before cancer hollowed her out. A voicemail I still had not been able to listen to without crying. Pictures I had promised myself, repeatedly, I would upload somewhere safer when work slowed down. Work never slowed down, so they were still there. On the machine, my fiancé had apparently let another woman walk out of my house with. I muted myself on Zoom and texted back. "You let Claire take my PC?" The typing bubble appeared almost instantly. "She needed it for streaming. Her setup sucks. You weren't using it. Relax." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I typed, "When did she take it?" His reply came back a few seconds later. Like 5 days ago. 5 days. For 5 full days. My custom-built PC had been sitting somewhere else, in someone else's home, powered on by hands that were not mine, and my fiancé had apparently decided that information was not urgent enough to mention. I felt that cold kind of anger then. Not explosive anger, not screaming anger, something worse. The kind that arrives sharp and clean, like a knife laid flat against your ribs. Because in that exact moment, something in me became very still. A realization. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not a communication problem. This is what happens when someone does not fundamentally respect you. I finished the meeting somehow. I do not remember a word I said in the final 10 minutes. I only remember the sound of my own voice staying eerily even, while my mind kept replaying the same phrase. "You weren't using it, relax." When the call ended, I shut my laptop, stood up, and walked downstairs. Ethan was in the living room. My fiancé, 33, charming when he wanted to be, handsome in that polished, socially easy way that made people trust him faster than they should. He was stretched out on the couch in joggers and a faded gray t-shirt, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. He glanced up when he heard me. "You're mad," he said. Not concerned, not apologetic, just mildly irritated, like I was about to become an inconvenience. I stopped in front of the couch. "Why did you let Claire take my PC without asking me?" He sighed immediately, like I was exhausting him already. "Vivian, seriously?" "Yes, seriously. She needed it for a collab stream. Her desktop isn't good enough and yours was just sitting upstairs." I laughed once. It did not sound like laughter. My desktop was not just sitting upstairs. It was in my office, in my house, belonging to me. He sat up a little then, but only enough to look annoyed more directly. "You're making this way bigger than it is." "No," I said quietly. "You made it exactly this big when you let another person remove $4,000 of my property from the house without my permission. She's bringing it back." "When?" He shrugged. That shrug. I can still see it. Casual, dismissive, weightless. A whole relationship collapsing inside one careless movement of the shoulders. When she's done using it, he said. I stared at him. Ethan, are you hearing yourself? Oh my God, Vivian, don't start. Don't start, I repeated. You let Claire walk out with my computer 5 days ago, and now you're acting like I'm the unreasonable one for noticing? He set his phone down with that tense little flourish people do when they want credit for being patient. You were not using it. That does not matter. It does, actually. No, it doesn't. I stepped closer. You do not get to loan out my things because you decide I'm not actively touching them. His jaw tightened. You're being possessive. I almost smiled at that. Possessive? Such an ugly, manipulative little word. The kind people use when they want to shame you for having boundaries. It's mine, I said. That is not possessive. That is ownership. He rolled his eyes. Actually rolled them. Claire is not some random criminal. She's my best friend. And I was supposed to be your fiancé. That landed. Not deeply enough, but I saw it. A flicker, a tiny shift in his expression before arrogance covered it again. He leaned back. She needed help. I helped her. I don't know why everything has to become a loyalty test with you. For a second, I just looked at him. Because that sentence told me more than he probably realized. Everything has to become a loyalty test with you. Not with him. With me. Meaning he already knew where his loyalty had gone. I want it back by tomorrow, I said. He gave a humorless laugh. That's not happening. I felt something inside me settle even further. Excuse me? She's in the middle of using it. You can wait a couple more days. No, I said, I can't. Vivian! No, you don't get to decide that for me. He stood up then, suddenly taller, voice sharpening. Can you stop being controlling for 5 minutes? There it was, the word he had been reaching for all along. Controlling. Because a woman asking for her own property back always sounds uglier when you rename it. I looked at the man in front of me. The man I had planned a wedding with, chosen paint samples with, imagined had children with, and all I could think was that I did not know him nearly as well as I had believed. Or maybe I did. Maybe this version of him had always been there. Maybe I had just been too in love to call it what it was. I'm not having this argument again, he said, grabbing his phone. Claire will return it when she's done. He turned away, already dismissing me. Already done. As if the conversation were over because he had decided it was over. I stood there another few seconds, looking at the back of his head, at the familiar shape of the living room, at the framed engagement photo on the shelf near the television. And I had one of those strange out-of-body moments where your future rearranges itself silently while nothing around you appears to move. Then I went upstairs, walked into my office, and stopped in the doorway. The empty space on my desk was somehow worse than the text. The cable's still there, the keyboard missing. The monitor's dark, that clean rectangular absence where my machine should have been. Proof. Physical, humiliating proof. Someone had entered my space, taken something essential, and left me to discover the outline of it like a chalk mark. I sat down slowly in my desk chair and called my older sister Naomi. She was an attorney in Dallas, smart, lethal, and not especially sentimental, which was exactly what I needed. She answered on the second ring. Please tell me you're not calling about seating charts. Worse, I said, and then I told her everything. When I finished, she went quiet for a beat. Then she said very calmly, Vivian, that is theft by conversion at minimum, maybe more, depending on what happens next. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the empty desk. I asked him for one thing, I said. Basic respect. That was it. Naomi's voice softened, but only a little. He knew that. He did it anyway. I closed my eyes. Downstairs, I could hear Ethan moving around like this was still a normal evening. Like dinner would happen. Like the wedding still existed. Like my silence meant surrender. Naomi spoke again. Text the friend directly. Make the demand in writing. Get timestamps. Save everything. Screenshots, receipts, photos, serial numbers. Do not argue emotionally. Document. I opened my eyes. Looked once more at the blank space on my desk. And for the first time that day, I felt something stronger than hurt. Purpose. Okay, I said. Then I pulled my laptop closer and started building the case that would end my engagement. The first thing I did after hanging up with Naomi was sit perfectly still for about 10 seconds. Not because I was uncertain, because I knew myself well enough to understand that if I moved too quickly while I was that angry, I would waste energy on the wrong thing. Crying would have been easier. Yelling would have been easier. Marching downstairs and smashing Ethan's phone against the kitchen counter would have been deeply satisfying, in the kind of way that ruins your own life while briefly illuminating somebody else's stupidity. But easy was not useful. Useful was evidence. So I opened a clean folder on my laptop and labeled it with the date. Then I started feeding it everything. Receipts, order confirmations, build photos, component serial numbers, credit card statements, a benchmark video I had recorded the night I finished the build, proudly narrating every part like the absolute nerd I am. My voice in the clip sounded lighter than I felt now, excited, smug, happy. I watched 10 seconds of it and had to close the window. There I was, smiling into the camera as the system booted for the first time. There was my Windows login. There were the purple-blue tones of the water loop. There was proof. If Ethan had bothered to ask me before offering up my machine like some communal party favor, he would have known I documented everything. Then again, if Ethan had respected me, I would not have been sitting in my office building a theft file against his best friend while he scrolled through social media downstairs. I opened Instagram next. Claire was easy to find. Of course she was. Ethan had shown me her posts enough times over the last 2 years that I knew her handle without thinking about it. Claire Lawson, 30 years old, self-described content creator. Her feed looked exactly the way women like her always want their lives to look. Curated, filtered, artificially effortless. Coffee cups held near windows. Overexposed selfies. Gym mirror shots with captions about discipline. Sunset reels. Shallow affirmations layered over music designed to sound deep without ever meaning anything. And there, in a story she had posted just 2 hours earlier, was my PC. Not a PC like mine. Mine. The case. The RGB glow. The custom cooling system. The fourth fan bracket I had installed slightly off-center because the replacement part had arrived late and I had not bothered to redo it after. Little details only I would recognize instantly. She had posted it like a trophy. A sleek, angled shot of her desk, ring light glowing, microphone arm extended, my machine humming beneath the frame. Caption, upgrade night, with a cluster of hashtags beneath it. Streamer life, new setup, PC girl, blessed. I stared at the image so long the anger came back hot and bright for a second. The nerve of her. The sheer, almost performance-level audacity. She had not borrowed my computer. She had stolen it and then advertised the theft. I screenshotted everything. The story, her profile, the timestamp, the angle of the desk, every visible detail. Then I sent her a direct message. Claire, this is Vivian. I need my PC returned by tomorrow evening. Let me know what time works for you to drop it off. I watched the read receipt appear almost immediately. She saw it. She did not answer. I waited an hour. Still nothing. So I pulled her number from an old group thread Ethan had added me to months before and texted her there too. Need my PC back by tomorrow. You can return it anytime after 6 p.m. 3 hours later, she finally replied. Still using it. Ethan said it was fine. I read that twice, then typed back. Ethan doesn't own it. I do. Return it by tomorrow. Read. No response. Just silence. The kind of silence that tells you somebody thinks they are protected. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the message thread. It was not just that Claire felt entitled to my property. It was that she genuinely believed Ethan's permission mattered more than mine. That belief did not come from nowhere. It had been built. Federal. Protected. Encouraged. By him. Downstairs, I could hear the television now. Some sports panel blaring in low bursts between commercials. Ethan laughing once at something on his phone. He was comfortable. That irritated me more than I can explain. Because meanwhile, I was upstairs documenting violations like I was cleaning blood off a floor while the person who caused the accident complained about the smell. I went downstairs eventually, not to argue, but because I wanted to look at him once more, while I still remembered what denial looked like on his face. He was in exactly the same position on the couch, one ankle crossed over the opposite knee, phone in hand. Barely glanced up when I entered. Well, he said. Well, what? Are you done spiraling? That almost made me laugh. I folded my arms. I contacted Claire directly. She has until tomorrow evening to return my PC. He lowered his phone slowly. You messaged her? Yes. His expression hardened in that subtle, ugly way men sometimes manage when they think they are the reasonable one in the room. That was unnecessary. No, I said. What was unnecessary was you letting her take it. She's already stressed out. I just stared at him. She, I repeated, is stressed out. Yes, because I asked for my own property back. He stood up again, tension rising into his shoulders. Why are you doing this like it's a legal issue? Because it is, I thought. But I did not say that yet. Instead, I said, because she has something that belongs to me, and neither of you seem remotely bothered by that. You always do this, he snapped. Do what? Turn everything into a power fight. I tilted my head. Interesting. He made a frustrated sound. Claire needed help. I helped her. A normal person would understand that. A normal person, I said quietly, would ask before removing a $4,000 piece of equipment from someone else's office. His jaw flexed. That landed too. Good, but still not enough. You're humiliating me, he said. That one actually caught me off guard. I blinked. I'm humiliating you. Yes, messaging her behind my back like I can't handle this. I let out a breath through my nose and something inside me shifted again. Because once a person starts talking like that, once they center their embarrassment over your harm, the conversation is not really a conversation anymore. It is a confession. He was not upset about what had happened. He was upset that I had stopped quietly absorbing it. I'm going upstairs, I said. He laughed harshly. Of course you are. But this time there was less confidence in it. Less swagger. Because maybe some part of him had started to realize that I was no longer speaking to him as a fiancé trying to restore peace. I was speaking to him like a witness. The next morning, I woke up alone. Ethan was gone. There was a note on the kitchen island in his slanted handwriting. Stayed at Claire's. You're being ridiculous and I need space. I read it once and actually smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was useful. He was at Claire's, where my PC was. Perfect. I took a photo of the note, added it to the folder, and made coffee. Then I went back upstairs and opened my monitoring logs. This is the part where people always get weird, as though working in cybersecurity somehow makes you suspicious for keeping track of your own devices. It doesn't. It makes you realistic. I had standard remote monitoring on the system. Nothing invasive, nothing illegal, nothing that could spy on anybody's webcam or record conversations. Just regular logging for device health, connection events, login attempts, and IP history. The sort of thing a person in my field considers basic hygiene. And the logs told me exactly what I needed to know. The PC had been powered on every single day since it left my house. Same external IP range, North Austin. The geolocation trace pointed to a luxury apartment complex called the Residences at Domain. I knew the building. Everyone in Austin did. Glass, steel, rooftop pool, concierge desk, influencer bait. The kind of place people took photos in front of to suggest their lives were going better than they were. Interesting choice for someone who was always broke whenever brunch checks arrived. I screenshotted the logs, saved the IP records, exported the activity history, added it all to the folder. Then I pulled up my purchase records and cross-referenced everything one more time. Graphics card from Newegg. Processor and motherboard from Micro Center. Storage and RAM from Amazon. Cooling components from a specialty vendor in Dallas. Separate charges across multiple dates, everyone traceable to my card. Everyone mine. At noon, I called an old friend from college named Marcus. He worked as a detective with Austin PD now. We were not best friends, but we had stayed close enough over the years to do the occasional dinner and send each other miserable memes about adulthood. He picked up on the third ring. Well, if it isn't my favorite paranoid engineer, I need advice on a property issue. Those are never good words together. Go ahead. So I told him, not dramatically, just the facts. The missing PC, Ethan's permission, Claire's refusal to return it, the screenshots, the logs, the value. Marcus was quiet for a second after I finished. Then he said, okay, first of all, I love you professionally. This documentation is gorgeous. Despite everything, I almost laughed. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in 24 hours. Second, he said, yes, this is serious. In Texas, property at that value is not a cute little misunderstanding. If you've requested it back clearly and she refuses, now we're in theft by conversion territory. Maybe more depending on use and intent. I figured. You've got serials? Yes. Receipts? Yes. Proof of current possession? Yes. Read receipts? Yes. He exhaled low. Honestly, this is one of the cleanest victim files I've heard in a while. File the report. Keep every communication in writing. Do not call her screaming. Do not show up at the apartment complex. Do not do anything cinematic. Wasn't planning to? Good. Let us be the dramatic ones. When I hung up, I felt something I had not felt since Ethan's first text. Not relief exactly, but confirmation. The situation was exactly as ugly as I believed it was. I was not overreacting. I was reacting proportionally to a violation everyone else wanted me to shrink. Around noon, Ethan texted me, "You need to apologize to Claire." I stared at that message for a long time. Then another came in. "You're being hostile and making her uncomfortable." That one actually made me laugh out loud in my office. Uncomfortable. Right. I typed back. "She can end her discomfort by returning my property." He replied almost instantly. "You're acting like such a jerk." I did not answer. There was nothing left to say to a man who could watch another woman take something irreplaceable from me and still frame me as the aggressor for wanting it back. At 6:03 p.m., I sent Claire one final text. Final request. Return my PC by tomorrow at 5 p.m. If it is not returned by then, I will file a police report for theft. Seen. No response. 30 seconds later, Ethan called. I let it ring. He called again. Voicemail. When the notification came through, I played it on speaker while sitting alone in the darkening office, the empty space on my desk glowing like an accusation. His voice came first, already tight with anger. Vivian, this is insane. Claire said you're threatening her now. She'll give it back when she's ready. If you file a police report over this, I swear to God, we're done. I could hear Claire in the background. Not clearly, but enough. A soft female voice feeding him lines. Coaching. Shaping. Always there. He continued, louder now. I'm not marrying someone who would do this to my best friend over a stupid computer. I sat very still until the message ended. Then I replayed the last sentence. Not because I needed to hear it again. Because I wanted the exact wording. I saved the voicemail, exported a copy, dropped it into the folder, and that, more than anything, felt like the real end of the engagement. Not because he threatened to leave, but because he thought the threat would still control me. He still believed the wedding mattered more to me than reality. He still believed I would fold if he made the emotional cost high enough. I looked at the ring on my hand that night for a long time. Platinum band, oval diamond. Ethan had chosen it himself and cried when he proposed, which had once felt beautiful to me. Now it just looked expensive. Heavy, a symbol of how thoroughly someone can perform devotion while failing the simplest test of loyalty. The next morning, I took a long lunch break, drove downtown, and walked into the police station with my laptop, a USB drive, printouts, and the kind of composure people mistake for calm when they have never seen rage become organized. The officer at the desk listened carefully while I explained everything. When I finished, she looked at the stack of documents, then at me. You built all this overnight? Most of it already existed. I just organized it. She gave me a faint smile. Of course you did. She spent the next 10 minutes going through the evidence. The receipts, the serial numbers, the screenshots, the messages, the remote logs. Another officer came over at one point, younger, probably curious, and after about 20 seconds of looking at the screen, he muttered, "This is the most complete theft packet I've ever seen." I did not smile. The desk officer typed for a while longer, then looked up. All right, based on the value of the property and the written demand for its return, we have solid grounds to open this as felony theft by conversion. We'll assign it for follow-up. I nodded. How soon? A day or two, depending on workload, but with documentation like this, it won't get ignored. Then she paused, typed something else. Her eyebrows lifted. Interesting. What? She turned the monitor slightly back toward herself, not enough for me to read it. Claire Lawson, date of birth March 15th, 1996? That's her. She has a prior from 2022, retail theft, deferred disposition, but it's in the system. For a second, all I did was stare. Then I leaned back in the chair slowly. Of course she did. Of course, a woman who posted stolen property like decor and ignored direct demands to return it had done this before. It fit too neatly. The officer looked at me over the edge of her glasses. Off the record, pattern behavior never helps. No, I thought. It never does. When I left the station, the sun outside felt too bright. I stood on the sidewalk for a second with my folder under one arm and my phone in my hand, breathing in that sharp, hot Austin air, feeling something inside me settle into certainty. Not satisfaction. Not yet. Just inevitability. Because now it was real. Documented. Moving. No longer a private betrayal inside a townhouse between people pretending love excused everything. By the time I got home, Ethan had texted me 4 times. Where are you? We need to talk. Answer your phone. Don't do anything stupid. I read every message. Then set the phone down on the kitchen counter and looked around the room we had shared. The framed photos. The throw blanket he never folded. The coffee mug he always left beside the sink. Little domestic traces of a life that had looked normal until the wrong pressure exposed what was underneath it. I did not respond, because I had already done the talking. Now the consequences could speak for themselves. Saturday morning, Ethan came back like nothing had actually broken. No apology. No hesitation. Just the sound of the front door unlocking and his footsteps moving through the house like he still belonged there in the same way he had a week ago. I was in the kitchen making breakfast. Eggs, coffee, routine. Because there is something deeply stabilizing about continuing normal actions while everything else shifts underneath you. He walked in fast, energy sharp, agitation barely contained. The police called Claire, he said immediately. No hello, no pause. Just impact. I cracked another egg into the pan and didn't look at him. Okay. His voice jumped. That's all you have to say? They called her about the theft report, I said calmly. That's how that works. He stared at me like I had just spoken a different language. They're saying she stole your computer, he snapped. They told her to return it, or they're pressing charges. I slid the spatula under the eggs, flipped them carefully. Sounds accurate. Vivian, are you serious right now? I turned off the stove, plated the food, walked to the table, and sat down. Only then did I look up at him. Yes, I said, I am. His face flushed red. You called the cops on my best friend. I took a bite, chewed slowly, let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. I asked for my property back multiple times, I said. She ignored me. That's theft. It's not theft, he shot back immediately. I gave her permission. I set my fork down, and for the first time since he walked in, I leaned forward. You don't own it, I said quietly. You cannot give permission for something that does not belong to you. That's exactly how ownership works. He dragged a hand through his hair, pacing now, energy spilling out of him in uneven bursts. You're going to ruin her life over this, he said. There it was again. That framing. Not what she did, what I was doing. You understand that, right? He continued. This could go on her record. She could get charged. All because you couldn't just wait a few more days. I held his gaze. She already has a record. That stopped him. What? Retail theft 2022. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost physical. How do you know that? The police ran her information. He blinked like he was trying to rearrange reality into something that made sense again. That doesn't mean anything, he said finally, weaker now. That was probably nothing serious. It means this is not her first time taking something that isn't hers, I replied. His jaw tightened again, but there was hesitation in it now. Doubt. Good. Because for the first time since this started, the illusion he had been standing on was starting to crack. He pulled out his phone and started texting furiously. Claire. Of course. I finished my breakfast while he stood there trying to fix something that was already past repair. After a few minutes, he looked up again. She's freaking out, he said. The police are saying this is a felony. I shrugged lightly. It is. You're unbelievable. No, I said. I'm consistent. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. And maybe he didn't. Because the version of me he had been used to was someone who explained, softened, negotiated, tried to maintain emotional balance even when she was the one being disrespected. That version of me was gone. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just replaced. You've changed, he said finally. I almost smiled. No, I said. I just stopped pretending this was okay. He let out a harsh breath, grabbed his keys off the counter. This isn't over, he muttered. No, I agreed. It's not. The door slammed hard enough behind him that one of the picture frames in the hallway rattled against the wall. I didn't get up to fix it. I just sat there for a second, letting the silence settle back into place. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Update. Unit went to her address this morning. No answer. Left notice. Also flagged prior. DA is interested. Might escalate. I read it twice. Then once more. The DA's office. Interested. Escalate. This was no longer just about getting my property back. This had become something else. Something bigger. I forwarded the message to Naomi. She called me within 30 seconds. They're actually pushing this, she said without preamble. Apparently. That's because your documentation is airtight and she has a prior. This is exactly the kind of case prosecutors love. Clean, provable, repeat behavior. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. So what happens now? They'll try to recover the property. If she resists or lies, it gets worse for her. If they find anything else, anything at all, this can spiral quickly. I thought about that for a second. Then I said, define spiral. Naomi was quiet for half a beat. Digital access, she said. If she's been using your machine and touched anything she shouldn't have, accounts, files, protected systems, that's a completely different category of crime. Something cold moved through my chest. I hadn't even considered that yet. Not seriously. She wouldn't, I said automatically. Naomi didn't respond right away. And that silence told me exactly what she thought. People who ignore direct requests and post stolen property online, she said finally, are not known for their restraint. I swallowed. Yeah, I said, fair. We hung up after that. And for the first time since this started, I felt something that wasn't anger. It was unease. Because suddenly, the situation felt less contained, less predictable, less about one object, more about access. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid, because my brain kept running scenarios. What if she had opened my email? What if she had gone through my files? What if she had accessed anything work-related? Every possibility branched into 10 more. By Sunday afternoon, the call came. Unknown number. I answered immediately. Vivian Cross? Yes. This is Detective Harris with Austin PD. I'm calling regarding your theft report. I sat up straighter. Yes. We executed a search warrant this morning at the subject's residence. For a second, everything went completely still. A warrant? I repeated. Yes. Your documentation supported probable cause. Judge signed off late Saturday. I didn't speak. I just listened. We recovered your PC, he continued. It was located in the subject's bedroom, set up and actively in use. My eyes closed briefly. There it was. Confirmation. She initially claimed it was hers, he added. But once we matched the serial numbers to your receipts, that claim didn't hold for more than about 30 seconds. I let out a slow breath. Okay, I said. But then his tone shifted slightly. And that's when everything changed. There's something else you need to know, he said. My grip tightened on the phone. What? During our initial sweep, we observed evidence that the system had been used to access multiple personal accounts belonging to you. My stomach dropped. What kind of accounts? Email, bankings, social media, cloud storage. For a second, I couldn't speak. It felt like the floor had tilted under me. She logged into them? I managed. Yes, he said, repeatedly, over several days. My mind started racing instantly. Every account, every password, every piece of my life that had ever passed through that machine. What was she doing? I asked. Hard to say definitively at this stage, he replied. From what we saw, it appears she was browsing, looking through emails, checking financial information, reviewing stored files. A pause. Then, she also attempted to access a corporate VPN. My heart actually skipped. My work network? Yes. Did she get in? No, the attempt failed. Two-factor authentication blocked it. Relief hit me so fast it almost made me dizzy. But it didn't last. Because the next thing he said erased it completely. We're coordinating with federal authorities now, he continued. Unauthorized access of this nature can fall under federal statutes depending on the scope and intent. Federal. That word hung in the air like something heavy. What happens next? I asked quietly. We'll need a formal statement from you later this week. In the meantime, secure all your accounts immediately. Change passwords. Enable additional authentication. And do not contact the subject or any associates. Associates. Ethan. My jaw tightened. Understood, I said. When I hung up, I just sat there, phone still in my hand, breathing shallow, because this had crossed a line I hadn't fully seen coming. She hadn't just taken my property. She had gone through my life, my emails, my finances, my memories, everything. Not out of necessity, not out of desperation, out of curiosity, or worse, intent. I stood up abruptly and moved to my laptop, changed every password, email first, then banking, then social media, then cloud storage, then everything else. Enabled two-factor authentication everywhere. Set alerts, called my bank, locked accounts, issued new cards, flagged activity, contacted my crypto exchange, locked it down. Every step felt like closing doors behind someone who had already been walking through my house. By the time I finished, it was dark outside. The house felt different, quieter, but not peaceful, just empty. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, I let it ring, then ring again, then again. Finally, I answered. What? I said. You went too far, he said immediately. No concern. No question. Just accusation. She's being investigated now. Do you understand what you've done? I leaned against the desk. No, I said calmly. Do you understand what she did? She didn't hack anything, he snapped. She was just using the computer. She accessed my accounts. Silence. Then, what? She went through my email, my bank, my files. She tried to access my work network. Another silence. Longer this time. That's not... It is, I said. The police found it. His voice shifted then. Less certain. More defensive. She wouldn't do that. She did. You don't know that. I do, I said quietly, because they documented it. He exhaled hard. This is insane. No, I said. This is real. Another pause. Then, softer now. What do you want me to say? That question landed differently than everything else he had said. Because for the first time, it sounded like he didn't have a script. Like Claire wasn't in the background feeding him lines. Like he was alone with the reality of it. And still, he didn't say he was sorry. I don't want you to say anything, I said. Vivian, I want you to understand something, I continued. This isn't about a computer anymore. He didn't respond. This is about the fact that you let someone into my life who violated it at every level, I said, and then you defended her. I didn't know. You didn't care to know, I corrected. Silence again. Then finally, so what now? I looked around the room. At the empty space where my PC had been, at the life we had built in this house, at everything that had quietly shifted into something unrecognizable. Now, I said, a small pause. Then clear. Now you pack your things. He inhaled sharply. You're kicking me out? Yes. Vivian, be serious. I am. You can't just... My name is on the lease, I said. Yours isn't. You're a guest. That's not... It is. His breathing got heavier, anger rising again. But underneath it now, something else. Fear. You're ending this, he said. No, I replied. You did that the moment you chose her over me. Silence. Then, almost a whisper. You're really doing this. I didn't hesitate. Yes. He hung up. I set my phone down slowly, and for the first time since all of this started, I felt something close to clarity. Not relief. Not yet. But direction. Because the situation had finally become simple. He had made his choice. Claire had made hers. And now, I was making mine. Monday morning felt quiet. Not peaceful. Just stripped down. Like a room after furniture has been removed. Everything's still there, but nothing softening the edges anymore. I woke up to 17 missed calls and over 40 messages from Ethan. All sent between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. I made coffee first. Because there's no version of reality where I deal with that kind of emotional chaos before caffeine. Then I sat at the kitchen counter and read them. They followed a pattern. They always do. We need to talk. Please answer. This is getting out of hand. Claire is going to get arrested. The police said this could go federal. Why are you doing this? You're ruining her life. You're ruining our life. And finally, this is all your fault. I stared at that last message for a long time. Not because it hurt, because it clarified everything. There it was. His final position. Not confusion. Not regret. Not even denial. Blame. Clean, direct, unapologetic. I took a sip of coffee, set the mug down, and typed exactly one reply. Change of plans. I'm keeping the townhouse. You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to get your things out. Leave the ring on the counter. I hit send. Then I put my phone face down. It rang immediately. I let it. Again. Again. On the third call, I answered. You can't kick me out, Ethan said before I could speak. My name is on the lease. It's not, I replied calmly. You never added yourself. You said it was easier this way, remember? Silence. Then, you're being insane. No, I said, I'm being clear. You're breaking up with me over this? I leaned back slightly in my chair. No, I said. I'm breaking up with you because you let someone steal from me, defended it, and then tried to threaten me into silence when I did something about it. That's not what happened. That is exactly what happened. His breathing got heavier on the other end. She made a mistake. She made several choices. You're going to throw everything away over this? I looked around the kitchen. At the counter, we had picked together. At the cabinets, we argued about for 2 weeks because he wanted matte black and I wanted something warmer. At the life that used to feel shared, it's already gone, I said quietly. That stopped him. For a second. Just enough. Then anger rushed back in to fill the space. I hate you, he snapped. I smiled faintly. Friday, 5 p.m., I said. And I hung up. Blocked his number. Blocked his social media. Blocked Claire's too. Because I was done giving either of them access to me in any form. The next few days were strange. Not chaotic. Not dramatic. Just procedural. Like dismantling something that had already collapsed internally. Ethan didn't come back. Instead, his sister, Lena, showed up Tuesday morning. Knocked gently. Waited. I opened the door to find her standing there with a small stack of boxes and that same steady, grounded expression she always had. Lena had never been like Ethan. Where he was reactive, she was measured. Where he chased validation, she avoided unnecessary attention. If anyone in his family actually saw things clearly, it was her. I'm here to pack his stuff, she said. Her tone was neutral. Careful. Not defensive. Not accusatory. Just factual. I stepped aside. Come in. She hesitated for half a second, like she expected resistance. Then she walked in. Do you need help? I asked. She blinked at me, clearly surprised. You're offering to help me pack your ex-fiancé's things? I'm not interested in dragging this out, I said. The faster it's done, the better. She studied my face for a moment, probably looking for sarcasm. Didn't find it. Okay, she said finally. We worked in silence at first. She moved efficiently. Clothes into boxes, shoes into bags, electronics wrapped carefully, everything labeled. I handed her packing tape when she needed it. Stacked boxes near the door. It felt almost professional, like we were clearing out an office instead of dismantling a relationship. About 2 hours in, she paused, holding one of Ethan's books in her hand. Can I ask you something? She said. I leaned against the wall. Sure. What actually happened? I raised an eyebrow slightly. Ethan says you went nuclear over Claire borrowing your computer, she continued. But that doesn't sound like you. There it was, the version of the story he had been telling. Predictable, convenient, incomplete. So I showed her. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just factually. I pulled up the folder on my laptop, walked her through the timeline. The texts, the ignored messages, the Instagram story, the police report, the prior record. Then finally, The unauthorized access logs. She sat down halfway through, her expression shifting with each piece. Confusion, then disbelief, then something heavier. Good grief, she muttered under her breath. I didn't interrupt. Didn't soften it. Didn't defend myself. Just let the truth sit there between us. He didn't tell me any of this, she said finally. I figured. He said you were being vindictive. I gave a small, humorless smile. Of course he did. She shook her head slowly. Claire's been trouble since college, she said. Ethan just refuses to see it. I didn't respond, because that wasn't my problem anymore. She closed the laptop gently. I'll have everything out by tomorrow evening, she said. Thank you. She hesitated again, then added quieter. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, you didn't deserve this. That landed more than anything Ethan had said in days, because it was the first honest acknowledgement. Yeah, I said, I know. By Friday evening, the house was empty. Of him, of his things, of that constant low-level tension I hadn't even realized had been there until it was gone. Lena texted to confirm everything was out. True to her word, she had left the place clean. Neat, respectful. On the kitchen counter, exactly where I had asked, sat the engagement ring. Next to it, a note. I read it once. You're making a huge mistake. Claire did nothing wrong. I didn't read it twice. I threw it away. Picked up the ring. Turned it in my fingers for a moment. Then dropped it into a drawer. Closed it. And that was that. The house felt different that night. Bigger. Quieter. Like the walls themselves had exhaled. I ordered pizza. Sat on the couch. Watched something mindless. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. Not joy. Not yet. But the absence of conflict. The absence of having to justify myself. The absence of someone standing in the middle of my life insisting that my boundaries were negotiable. Monday morning, the call came. Detective Harris again. We completed the full analysis of your system, he said. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Okay. There's confirmed evidence of unauthorized access to approximately 15 separate accounts belonging to you. My jaw tightened slightly. Email, banking, social media, cloud storage, crypto accounts. I closed my eyes briefly, even though I already knew. Hearing it laid out like that made it heavier. There's also attempted access to your employer's secure network, he added. I opened my eyes again. Yeah, you mentioned that. Your company may want to file their own complaint, he said. This crosses into potential corporate liability territory. Of course it did. Because of course, it wasn't just personal. It never is. I'll notify them, I said. There's one more thing, he continued. Something in his tone made me straighten. The U.S. Attorney's Office is now involved. I let out a slow breath. Federal. Again. This is getting big, he said. I figured. We'll contact you for a formal statement. In the meantime, continue documenting everything and avoid contact. Understood. When I hung up, I didn't move for a while. Just stood there, processing. Because what had started as one violation had unfolded into something far larger. Theft. Privacy invasion. Financial access. Attempted corporate intrusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. That night, around 9 p.m., someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking. Pounding. I checked the camera. Ethan. He looked wrecked. Hair messy, eyes red. Behind him, a car idled at the curb. Lena in the driver's seat, watching. I opened the door, but kept the chain on. What? I said. We need to talk. No, we don't. Please, 5 minutes. I hesitated, then unlocked the chain. Let him in. Mistake? Maybe. But I wanted to see this version of him. The one that showed up when everything else failed. He walked in fast, pacing immediately. Claire took a plea deal, he said. I leaned against the wall. Okay. She's going to prison. I held his gaze. Yeah, I said, that's what happens. He turned on me then, eyes wide, voice breaking. This is your fault. There it was. Even now. Even here. Still, my fault. She wouldn't be going to prison if you hadn't done this, he continued. If you hadn't pushed this so far, she wouldn't be going to prison if she hadn't committed multiple felonies, I cut in. She made a mistake. She made a series of deliberate choices. She was just curious. I actually laughed at that. A short, sharp sound. Curious? I repeated. That's your defense? She accessed my bank accounts, my email, my personal files, and tried to break into my company's network. And your argument is curiosity? He faltered, just for a second. But then, she's my best friend, he said. And there it was. The truth. Still the same. Unchanged. Unshaken. I know, I said quietly. He reached into his pocket, pulled something out. The ring. Held it out toward me like it meant something again. We can fix this, he said. Just help her. Talk to the lawyer. Ask for leniency. Please. I looked at the ring, then at him. And for the first time since I met him, I felt nothing. No love, no anger, no attachment, just clarity. I don't want you back, I said. His face crumpled slightly. You can't be serious? I am. I'm offering to fix this. You're offering me a version of reality where none of this mattered, I said. I'm not interested. You're a monster. I shrugged lightly. Okay. Vivian, get out. He stared at me, then threw the ring. It hit my shoulder, dropped to the floor. I hope you're happy, he said. I am, I replied. And this time, I meant it. He left, door slamming behind him. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from Lena. I'm sorry, I tried to stop him. I typed back. You did enough. Then I set the phone down, looked around the quiet house, and realized there was nothing left to fix. I didn't plan to go to the sentencing. That was my original decision. Clean break. No more emotional investment. Let the system do what it was going to do and move on. But Naomi disagreed. You should be there, she told me over the phone. Not for her, for you. I already know how this ends. That's not the point, she said. Closure isn't always about outcome. Sometimes it's about witnessing the consequences you set in motion and understanding that you were right to do it. I didn't answer immediately. Then she added quieter. And if Ethan shows up, you might want to see that version of him too. The one that doesn't get to control the narrative anymore. So I went. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Neutral colors, fluorescent lighting, that strange mix of tension and boredom that always seems to hang in spaces where people's lives get quietly rearranged. Naomi sat beside me, sharp suit, calm expression, the kind of presence that made people instinctively sit straighter when she entered a room. Claire was already there, at the defense table, and for a second I almost didn't recognize her. No filters, no curated angles, no perfect lighting. Just a woman in a plain, conservative dress, hair pulled back, face stripped of makeup and control. She looked smaller, not physically, but in presence, like someone who had finally run out of ways to perform her way out of consequences. Her attorney sat beside her, young, tense, flipping through papers like he was trying to stay one step ahead of something that had already overtaken him. Ethan was in the back row. Of course he was. He looked worse than the last time I had seen him. Tired, hollowed out, like the past few weeks had finally caught up with him all at once. When his eyes found mine, he froze, just for a second, then looked away. Lena sat next to him. She gave me a small nod. I returned it. That was all. No hostility, no alliance, just acknowledgement. The hearing itself was methodical. The prosecutor laid everything out. Clearly, efficiently. No drama needed when the facts are strong enough. Value of the stolen property. Timeline of refusal to return it. Documented evidence. Prior offense. Unauthorized access to personal accounts. Attempted intrusion into a protected corporate network. Every piece stacked neatly on top of the next until the shape of it became undeniable. The defense tried. Of course they did. They always do. They framed Claire as overwhelmed, misguided, under pressure, someone who made a bad decision that spiraled beyond her control. They talked about stress, about mental health, about how she never intended for things to go this far. I listened without reacting, because intention doesn't erase action, and consequences don't disappear just because someone didn't plan them properly. The judge listened too, face neutral, expression unreadable, the kind of patience that comes from seeing the same patterns play out over and over again. Eventually, the prosecutor stood again. Your Honor, she said, the victim is present and would like to make a statement. Naomi's hand touched my arm lightly. A silent question. Are you sure? I nodded, then stood, walked to the front, didn't look at Claire, didn't look at Ethan, just faced the judge, and spoke. Your Honor, I said, voice steady. The defendant took my property without permission and ignored multiple requests to return it. A pause, long enough for the room to settle. When law enforcement recovered the system, they discovered that she had accessed my personal email, my banking information, my social media accounts, and private files stored in my cloud storage. I kept my tone even, controlled, precise. She also attempted to access my employer's secure network, which handles sensitive client data. That action alone had the potential to impact not just me, but my professional standing and the security of people I'm responsible to. Another pause. No shaking. No hesitation. This wasn't a single mistake, I continued. It was a series of choices made over multiple days, despite clear opportunities to correct them. I folded my hands in front of me. I'm asking the court to impose the full sentence recommended by the prosecution. Then I stepped back, returned to my seat. Naomi's hand squeezed my shoulder once. Firm, proud. I didn't look behind me. I didn't need to. I could feel Ethan's stare, could feel the weight of everything he had refused to see, finally laid out in a way he couldn't interrupt or reframe. The judge didn't take long. He reviewed the file, adjusted his glasses, then looked directly at Claire. You have been convicted of felony theft, unauthorized access to protected systems, and identity-related offenses, he said. His voice was calm, measured, final. You have a prior record involving similar behavior. While that case did not result in a formal conviction, it demonstrates a pattern. Claire started crying. Quiet at first, then harder. Her attorney placed a hand on her shoulder. The judge continued. The court finds that the harm in this case extends beyond the value of the property itself. The invasion of privacy and attempted access to secure systems significantly aggravate the severity of the offense. A pause. Then, I am sentencing you to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $8,000 to the victim. The gavel came down, sharp, definitive. And just like that, it was done. Outside the courtroom, everything felt louder. Voices, footsteps, the low hum of people processing what they had just witnessed. I stepped into the hallway with Naomi beside me. We didn't speak immediately, because some moments don't need words. Ethan was waiting. Of course he was. Lena stood slightly behind him, already looking tired of what was about to happen. Are you happy now? He demanded the second I got close. His voice wasn't loud, but it was raw, fractured. I met his eyes, calm. I wanted my property back, I said. Everything else came from her choices. She's going to prison, he said. Yes, you could have stopped this. No, I said. I chose not to. That hit him harder than anything else, because it was the truth he didn't want. That I had power in this situation, and I had chosen not to protect the person who harmed me. After everything we had, he started. You chose her, I said simply, and you kept choosing her, even when it was obvious what she had done. His mouth opened, closed. No argument left. Lena stepped forward then, placing a hand on his arm. That's enough, she said quietly. He shook her off at first, then stopped, because even he could feel it now. There was nothing left to fight, no narrative left to twist, no leverage left to pull. He looked at me one last time, not angry, not defensive, just empty. Then he turned and walked away. Lena gave me a small, apologetic look before following him. And just like that chapter ended. 3 weeks later, I got my PC back, delivered by courier, chain of custody paperwork, every component exactly where it had been. They had cloned the drive for evidence, but nothing had been altered. I set it back up in my office slowly, carefully, like restoring something that had been violated but not destroyed. When it powered on, the familiar glow filled the room again. The soft hum, the steady light. It felt right, not because it fixed anything, but because it was mine again. Life after that settled into something new. Quieter, cleaner, more intentional. I upgraded parts of the setup, added a 4th monitor, reorganized the office, turned Ethan's old workspace into something useful instead of something shared. The townhouse felt different without him, lighter, not because I had gained something, because I had removed what didn't belong. 6 weeks later, I adopted a dog, a 3-year-old German Shepherd mix named Atlas. He sleeps next to my desk when I work, follows me from room to room like I'm the most interesting thing in the world. And somehow, in a way I didn't expect, he made the house feel like a home again. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how easily this could have gone differently if I had stayed quiet, if I had accepted the explanation, if I had prioritized peace over truth. I would still be engaged, still sharing this space, still explaining away behavior that didn't deserve explanation, still shrinking myself to make someone else comfortable. People like to say I destroyed a relationship over a computer, that I went too far, that I should have let it go. They're wrong. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to protect something that was already broken. And if I had to do it again, I wouldn't hesitate. Not for a second. Because in the end, it was never about the PC. It was about choosing myself when it actually mattered.